Guys, I have to say I'm loving this new microphone. It's making things a lot easier for me in terms of the audio quality. Now, in terms of the thinking quality here, that's going to be up to you guys, right? So I'm trying to help you so that your thinking can be as clear and precise and strong as possible. Number three, and the reason why we have to have some strong thinking is because number three gets us into money. We have two cell phone plans. All right, Angela's plan is represented by this equation. Benjamin's plan is represented by this graph. Here's the thing though. This graph gives us numbers. Those numbers represent things. What those numbers represent, they represent minutes and total cost. And we can put a couple of those pairs together and we can get an equation for Benjamin's graph. How can we do that? Well, we have to go back to a previous chapter. If you guys recall, the slope can be calculated by this equation. Y2 minus y1 over x2 minus x1. What are we going to put in which position? I'm going to say 72 will be my y2, which means 120 will be my x2. 60 will be my y1, which means 0 will be my x1. So what that gives us is 12 over 120. You can simplify 12 over 120 to 1 over 10, or 0.1, putting that at the lower right corner. Now, we can take that and the y-intercept, and now, guys, we can create an equation in y equals mx plus b form. What can we do with these two equations now? We can compare them, but we don't know what is more meaningful and what is less meaningful here just by the surface appearance. What am I talking about? So the slope is larger right here for Angela, and the y-intercept for Benjamin is larger. Is that a good thing? I give you a couple seconds to think about that because I'm being serious. Is it a good thing to have a larger number in either one of these instances for the slope or the y-intercept? We're talking about money, guys. So when you're contributing money to something, to a house, to an auto loan, to a cell phone, whatever it is, you don't want to have the most expensive plan. All right, so in terms of comparing these two, we see which one's larger and which one's smaller, but there needs to be some more information before we can determine what that means to us, right? Is it special that one has a larger slope? Is it special that one has a larger y-intercept? Well, I don't know. What can we use to see what those things mean, right? And what we should value in terms of the money we're going to have to pay for this plan. Well, they say in step B, let's assume that both people use 200 minutes. So that's 0.15 times 200 plus 49 for Angela, 0.10 times 200 plus 60 for Benjamin. So 200 minutes on the phone, because that's what we used to pay for, because they didn't have unlimited plans. So 200 times 0.10 is going to be 20. 20 plus 60 tells us that Benjamin's going to spend $80 on his cell phone plan if he talks for 200 minutes. Whereas Angela is going to spend, if she talks 200 minutes, she's going to spend $79. All right. Why is it important that I took some time to give you silence to think? That's important. I remember when I was a student, like some of you guys, I always wanted to get the right answer. I assumed, hey, it's math, bigger is better because that's how a lot of things go, right? The winning team is a team that scores the most runs in baseball, the most goals in soccer or hockey, the most points in basketball or football. So it's not always the case, though, that bigger is better with these equations. That's why we have a 4-step plan. Understand, come up with a plan, carry out the plan, and check to see if your answer makes sense. All right, so part of our understanding right now, after we did a comparison of the two plans, was to look at 200 minutes, and we see that Angela's plan with a smaller y-intercept and a higher cost per minute is actually cheaper if we want to speak for 200 minutes. That's pretty interesting. You know what else is interesting? The got it problem, because we have Mandy and we have Sarah, and they each have gym memberships. Mandy's gym membership has a total cost that can be calculated by a flat fee of $29 plus 3 times X, where X is the hours with a trainer. So essentially $3 per hour with a personal trainer. Very cheap right there. What about Sarah? Well, we have a little squiggly line right here. Takes us from 0 up to 40. And we have a dot, and kind of looks like it's at 40. But you have to look over to the right, and you see that it's actually 0.39. It's actually 0.39. So once again, if we start our comparison right now, the flat rate that Sarah pays is $39. It's more expensive than the flat rate that Mandy pays for her gym. So let's see what the cost is going to be. Cost here per hour with a personal trainer. That's going to be the slope or the rate of change for Sarah's graph. Let's see how we can calculate that, because we have another point up here, and that point is 451. So once again, our slope is y2 minus y1 over x2 minus x1. Rate of change, guys, delta y over delta x. So change in y over change in x. So we have 51 minus 39 over 4 minus 0. That's 12 over 4. Ooh, or 3. Well, check that out. Our slopes are the same. Our y-intercepts are different. So if the slopes are the same and Mandy has a lower y-intercept, since we're talking money, that's good, because that means it's cheaper for her and her membership at her gym than it is for Sarah and Sarah's membership. And we can see this quite clearly in step E. What is the total cost for each of these ladies if they spend 4 hours with a personal trainer? Well, 3 times 4 is 3 times 4. No matter how you slice it, that comes out to be 12. So we have 12 plus 29, 12 plus 39. So $41 for Mandy versus $51 for Sarah right there. So once again, that's a nice, specific, and quick visual for us so that we can see, hey, Mandy's got the better deal for this gym membership. We move in on 389, guys, to another financial literacy problem. And out to the side, they have a little blurb about multiple representations. They say we can find the 2 costs of truck rentals by extending the table, extending the line on the graph, or by writing an equation. The method you use will depend on the information we're given. Well, that's interesting, and that's provocative. So let's see what information we're given here. Lorena's mom needs to rent a truck to move some furniture. The cost to rent a truck from 2 different companies is shown in the table and the graph. So we have crosstown movers. Crosstown movers, we have a graph, a little squiggle right here, and we get 2 numbers on the graph. We get 1035 and 3045. We can calculate a slope, y2 minus y1 over x2 minus x1. 45 take away 35 is 10. 30 take away 10 is 20. So our slope is 1/2. If we wanted to get our b, then we just take this point, 1035. So 35 equals 1/2 times x plus b. So 35 equals 5 plus b. B equals 30. And guys, this is a review. That's the fantastic thing about a lot of these math problems, is that every time you do a problem from here on out, algebra, geometry, all the other math classes you're going to take, they're going to roll prior knowledge into the new material. That's why it's so important for you to learn what we're doing now, because you're going to keep adding to it. So if you didn't get slope-intercept form, point-slope form, you need to get it now, because you're going to have problems in Algebra 1, pardon me while I cough, that are going to bring it back to you and allow you to review and sharpen your understanding of those concepts. Now, if we go to Ron's Rentals, we have some information. Comes to us in a table. Okay, 10, 20, 30, so they're changing by 10, our x's. Our y's are changing by 25 each time. I wonder what that indicates. Giving you a chance to ponder that as I write this out. Because if you say that our slope is 25, you're missing the fact that we're jumping not by ones from each x, we're jumping by 10, right? So that's not 25 over 1, it's 25 over 10. So our slope is 2.5. What's our y-intercept and what's our equation? Well, we'll go ahead and put in 25, 10. So 25 equals 25 plus b equals 0. So y equals 2.5x. All right. Now, which company? So we have information that we can use to make a comparison. Y equals 1/2 x plus 30, y equals 2.5 x. Which company should she use to rent the truck for 40 miles? Guys, this is another example where the bigger number is going to be the one that we toss out, because we're talking money. When you're going to spend money on something, you're not going to choose the most expensive option. If you're paying to rent a truck to move furniture, you're going to go with the cheaper option. So let's see which one is cheaper here. So I'm going to take 40, plug this into our formula here. So half of 40 is 20. 20 plus 30 tells me it's going to be $50 if we use crosstown movers. If I go to Ron's Rentals, I'm going to bring this down here. Y equals 2.5x becomes 2.5 times 40. So crosstown movers is going to cost less money for 40 miles. And when I say less, guys, look at this. $100 versus $50. Don't choose 100. Choose 50. Right? That's what you're going to choose as a consumer. You're going to go with the better deal for yourself. Let's take a look at some guided practice problems now. These problems come to us, page 390. This is something you should be working on Thursday, by the way, if you're thinking about how can I pace myself. Do through 390 on Thursday. Do the next half of this on Friday. Well, this is interesting. A tiger in captivity is fed 13.5 pounds of food per day. You're going to say how much food? So food is equal to 13.5 times number of days, so 13.5 pounds per day. Graph at the right Comparing a tiger and an elephant, that's interesting. Number of pounds of food an elephant in captivity eats per day. And look at this, guys. This is not continuous. This is discrete. So discrete means we have our dots, which represent X, Y coordinate pairs, but our dots are not connected. Okay, so we have 1, 125, 2, 250, etc., etc. You can look there on page 390. Well, I have 1, 125, 13.5D. What if I put in 1 for D? Well, 13.5 times 1, 13.5. Well, we want to compare these functions by looking at their rates of change. So if I have 1 day with a tiger, he's eating 13.5 pounds of food. If I have 1 day with an elephant, he's eating 125 pounds of food. Ooh, well, that's interesting. So the rate of change for the tiger is 13.5. Sounds like a lot compared to us humans. But when we look at the elephant's values, we're increasing by 125 every time, right? So as we go from 1 to 2 on the x-axis, our y values go from 125 up to 250. We go from 2 to 3, we shoot up again from 250 to 375. So our rate of change here is 13.5 versus 125. What can we conclude? Well, if you're on a tight budget, you're probably going to want a pet tiger rather than a pet elephant, literally just in terms of the food budget, because the elephant eats a lot more, 125 pounds of food per day in captivity. That's wild. Because that's more than what some of you guys weigh, 125 pounds per day. Think about that. It's a lot of food. All right, moving into number 2. Carol's profit is represented by the function P equals 5B minus 15. Then we have a table for Kate's profit. Now, for this table, right, as we go up from 1 to 2 to 3 to 4, we're changing by 1. And what's happening to Kate's profit? Her profit is changing by 5. Ooh. So y equals 5x is the equation we can use to determine the profit for Kate, depending on how many bracelets she sells, because she makes $5 in profit off of each bracelet. That's going to be our rate of change. Our rate of change for Carol is also 5. So the rate of change is the same for both ladies. Now, what about the y-intercept? So if we just have a 5x right here, really that's telling us that our b is equal to 0. When we compare those two, well, 0 is greater than negative 15. What does that mean, though? Practically speaking, what does that mean? Well, that means for Kate, she doesn't have any extra costs associated with making the bracelets because she just has y equals 5x. For the 5b minus 15, what that tells us is to get her initial set of supplies to start making the bracelet, Carol's out $15. So she starts out $15 in the hole. So she has to sell 3 bracelets just to earn $0. That's crazy. Now, they ask us, how much is each girl going to make if she sells 30 bracelets? Well, really easy in part because 5 times 30 here is 150. So Kate makes $150 in profits when she sells 30 bracelets. What about Carol? Well, we know that 5 times 30 is 150, but she starts out $15 in the hole. So when she sells 30 bracelets, she only earns $135. Moving into number 3, cost to rent a raft from 2 different companies is shown. Which company should you choose if you want to rent a raft for 9 hours? Huh. Well, look at this. So the first one with this graph, we start out at 0. We're coming up. And it looks like we have some consistency. So we go from 1.6 to 318. So 18 minus 6 over 3 minus 1, 12 over 2. So we have a slope of 6. Y equals 6x because it starts at the origin. Now, that's for Water's Edge rafts. For Ryan's rafts, they give us a table. So we have 115, 2, 1725, 3, 1950, 4, 2175, etc., etc. All right, so here we're shifting by 225 for every hour. So y equals 225x plus b. How do we figure out the b? Let's just start simply, guys. Let's do 1 and 15. So b right here is equal to 15 minus 225, which means b is equal to 1275. So we get that y equals 225x plus 1275. Boom. Right there. Now we want to know what's better for 9 hours. Well, 9 times 6 is going to cost us $54 if we use Water's Edge. What about Ryan's rafts? So 225, I can write that as a fraction. It's 9 over 4, so 2 1/4. If I multiply that by 9, I get 81/4, which is 2025, plus 1275. Wow, that's a lot cheaper. It's a lot cheaper. And we can see that right here in the calculator. I'm going to get out of this. So we'll do 9 times 6. 225 times 9 plus 1275. Oh, what did I do? 225 times 9 plus 1275. There we go. $33, guys. That is a huge savings for you as a consumer. So we're going with Ryan's rafts, but not just because Ryan rhymes with wine. It's a lot cheaper. It's a lot cheaper. And that brings us to number 4. What are the advantages and disadvantages to representing a function as an equation instead of a graph? I can't answer that for you guys. That's something you need to look at and reflect on and answer for yourself. All right, what are some advantages? I mean, there's a reason why we express it in words, with equations, with graphs, and with tables, because they each bring something different to our understanding and to our ability to reason through and think through these problems. So what are some advantages and disadvantages? Think about that, and that's something you guys can bring to our next Zoom chat.